and the grammarian.
Yeah, you understand that I am not teaching.
Right,
I'm
you're
just the
a
administrator.
bureaucrat.
Yeah, oh,
What
okay. So don't ask me any of those questions.
Okay, one's a grammarian and one's a bureaucrat. Sounds like fun.
So I'm just going to get a voice, I'm going to get a level on your voice and ask you your name and your affiliation.
I'm Grant Goodall. I work at University of Texas at El Paso.
Okay. Grant, how long have you been teaching Esperanto?
Teaching Esperanto probably off and on for 20 years, something like that.
How did you get interested in it?
I got interested as a teenager, and I was just interested in languages in general, and I liked the idea of a language that was easy to learn, people from lots of different countries could learn, and so I just decided to learn it.
Where did you learn it?
I grew up here in the Bay Area, and at first I just learned it on my own. And then I started attending, was and is a local group here in the city, and I started attending that, and it was a very diverse group of people, immigrants and exiles from Eastern Europe, Japanese businessmen, and of course lots of Americans, and but they all used Esperanto in a very realistic way, and so I just arrived on the scene and kind of absorbed it.
What do you mean by used Esperanto in a realistic way?
Well, they, went out to dinner, had drinks, just did sort of ordinary things using the language. This was really a common language among the people, so they weren't just using it because they wanted to use it, but they often used it because it was the only common language that everyone had in the whole group.
I want to ask you about the basic structure of the language. As a layman, as a non-linguist, how would you explain it?
Well, it's very similar in lots of ways to languages that would be familiar to us, like English or Spanish or French. It bears a lot of resemblance to that, but without the irregularity. Like verbs just are the way they are. There's no irregular verbs or conjugations or things that you have to learn. But if you look at something written or see it spoken, it'll look a lot like Spanish or French or Italian or something like that.
Can you tell me where the roots from the words come from and where the grammatical structure comes from? Are there different origins for those two?
Partly. The words, a lot of it comes from Latin and from Romance languages generally, like French and Italian and Spanish. Some of the words come from English and from other Germanic languages. And there's sort of a scattering of words from other sources, but those are the main ones. The structure is mainly kind of standard. It's almost like standard human language.
Is there a standard human language structure?
Yes, roughly. That is, all languages have sort of the basic same sort of patterns, and Esperanto fits into that. It looks, as a linguist looking at Esperanto, you would not particularly be surprised by anything. It just sort of looks like an ordinary, off-the-rack language.
Do you know, I guess I'm interested in its origins and if the founder of the language was a linguist.
No. The founder of the language, the person who first got it going was in medicine, and but he knew a number of languages and seemed to have a lot of good common sense about how to put a language together.
No, I think I understood. If I understood properly, he was a teenager when he first came up with the language.
Yeah, when he first started.
Developing it.
Yeah.
So what does it mean that it would be a language that somebody in their teens could develop in terms of its, I don't know, what does it say about its facility or its complexity or its universality or its, the intuitive quality?
Well, I think one of the things that he did, which was probably pretty smart, and maybe this was because he was a teenager, was that I think he didn't over-intellectualize it. He didn't try to plan things out in too much detail. Rather, he came up with a basic vocabulary and basic structure, and started writing things in the language, translating things into the language. You know, he started translating the Bible, things from Shakespeare and you know, other well-known authors. Because I think he had an intuitive sense that really, what really matters in a language is examples of how it works. I mean, you don't really need so much at the beginning. You don't really need so much a grammar book. What you need is examples of what the language looks like when it's really used. And that's what he did. And then I think from that other people could follow, and they could read the basic grammar, and then they could read books written in the language. And through that they too would develop a kind of intuitive sense of the basic structure of the language and how it's used.